Good morning, I'm Pat Collins, and I have an important question for you this morning. If your child broke his arm and came to you in pain, obviously you'd care for him and take care of him. And even if he committed murder, I guess you'd say, well, he is still my child no matter what. But suppose your child came to you and said, Mother, Dad, I am homosexual. What would you do then? Today, more and more parents are having to face this question, and we'll meet three who went through this very experience. But first, I'd like you to see a portion of an interview that I had with a young male homosexual named Tim. We talked about his parents and how they feel.
Do you live with your family?
Yes, I do.
Your parents?
Yes.
Have they accepted your homosexuality?
I'm really not sure if they accepted it completely, but they've accepted me as a person. They need time to adjust.
What is the relationship with them? Are they very uptight about discussing it? Do you discuss it at home?
No, there's very limited discussion about it. But the relationship is very warm now that it's out in the open.
How did it get to be out in the open?
I told them. I was very depressed, and I told them why. It was just too much inside of me. And I felt that I had to have the closeness of my family and them behind me to keep going. So I had to tell them.
You're glad you did? Any
oh,
regrets?
Yes, very glad.
What did they say?
They didn't say anything. They were very...
Nothing? Oh, come on.
No,
they didn't say anything.
Not when I told them. Afterwards. My mother told me that she had known that I was going to be different since I was 8 or 9. So she knew before I did.
Timothy's parents have been able to handle and accept his homosexuality to some degree, but there are parents of homosexuals who have literally written their children off as dead, and that is the idea behind this poster put out by one of the gay liberation associations, and it says, "Your child is not dead, only gay." There are other parents, though, who have accepted their children's sexual preference and even actively support them in the gay liberation movement. Two such people are with me now this morning. They are Dr. and Mrs. Jules Manford. They are the parents of a married daughter and a 23-year-old son who is a homosexual. And he, by the way, is Morty Manford, and very active in the gay liberation movement. You often see his name in the press. And this is a picture of you, Dr. Manford, with Morty that was taken, I guess, a couple of years ago.
Yes.
It's a good picture. Mrs. Manford, how did you find out that Morty was homosexual?
Well, Morty was troubled about the fact that he felt his feelings when he was a teenager. And he asked me, he asked both his father and I, if he could go to a psychiatrist. And
what at that point did he, how did he describe his problem or his troubles?
Well, he asked, and I felt that if he had problems and didn't want to discuss it with us, he certainly needed somebody to talk to. And there was no doubt in my mind that this is what he should do.
What can you tell me, Doctor? Do you remember just exactly how it came up?
Eventually, the doctor told me, told the both of us. We didn't hear it from Morty himself.
What did he say to you, though, when he expressed some of these misgivings and feelings as a teenager? How did he describe them? What did he tell you? What was wrong with him?
He didn't. At that time, I think he was too uptight. We were too antagonistic. He had too much to hold back. And it wasn't really possible for him to really talk friendly until after we were completely advised.
Well, I think at that time, he himself felt very bad inside. After all, society teaches us homosexuals are no good, they're sick, they're degenerate, and we hear all these myths, and he was troubled. How could he come say to his parents, I'm not what you think I am, I'm not the wonderful person that you always say I am?
At that time, was he going out with girls? Was he dating?
Well, he had parties. I never knew of any particular date, but he went to parties. He had girls and boys at the house, and I realize now he was trying. But at the time,
He was trying to be straight.
He was trying to conform, yes, to what he thought we would like of him and what the world wanted of him.
Did you have any inkling at all? Any
Not
clue?
the least inkling. Morty was my child. He was
really
a
outstanding at
superior
all
person.
times.
That's
Yes, he was a leader. He was the president of the GO in his school for 3 years running. He practically ran the school.
The principal told us he's running it. His teacher said to me, one of his teachers said, send him to the very best college. Another teacher said, his social studies teacher said, he's going to be a senator someday. We had only good feelings about him. Anything Morty did was just right. People would say to me, he sits in the room and he doesn't open his mouth, and yet you feel drawn to this boy. Why, what would enter our minds? I had never any feelings about homosexuals. I gave very little thought to it. As far as I knew, I never knew any gay people. It never entered my mind that Morty was gay.
Do you remember your feelings when the psychiatrist, told you that Morty was gay?
Well, the doctor, of course, felt that this was a very terrible thing, the doctor that he was seeing. And
the doctors expressed all of this in a very
yes,
negative
and
way.
he expressed it, well, he's doing terrible things. And my feeling was, well, if my son is worried, if something is bothering him, I was worried about Morty's state of mind. This is the only thing that really bothered me. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard the doctor say he was gay, but it didn't seem to be of importance to me. My husband heard something different than I
what
heard.
did you hear?
Let's see.
I
You
don't
heard the gay
remember these
first.
things exactly. I guess it's a little blurry, but my opinion was not to worry about that so much. I felt that he would eventually mature and outgrow this. This was how I was deceived, I suppose. In any event,
You thought it
my
was a
reaction was-
phase. Thought it was a phase, and that
Yes.
Morty would outgrow it.
my reaction, of course, was to blame myself either for doing something wrong or failing to spend enough time with him when he was young. Since, of course, I've learned better
What do you mean by that?
that this isn't the parents' fault. It's not due to heredity. Nobody really knows what it is. Just like one of our children happened to be left-handed. In the same environment, the other two children were right-handed, you see.
Do you have the same feelings that you're not to blame and that you have no
I never
guilt?
blamed myself while my husband did, because after all, knowing Morty, his background as a child, his capabilities, how could I say that I was to blame? I'm not a domineering mother, and I questioned my daughter. I said, have I been domineering? And she and her friends assured me that I was just the opposite. This is something that happened, and this is Morty's life.
This is the way God made him. It's not a matter of choice, as if he or any of his friends were able to choose one way over another. They reluctantly had to accept what they were, in spite of, because of their feelings, in spite of their feelings. But God made them this way.
The reason they were reluctant is because of the way people make them feel. Ever since they were tiny, they heard names about people who were not heterosexual. They felt that they were not good, and this is why they're sick. When you hear psychiatrists say homosexuals are mostly sick, sure they're sick because people tell them they're no good. You give a person a bad image of himself, and he feels this way. The family looks down on them and calls them names, and they feel this way about themselves.
How did your family, your sisters or brothers and relatives, how did they react?
I told my sisters, they love Morty. This is Morty. We love him. Why should we stop loving him? Because he suddenly tells us that he's, in one way, he's different. He has different preferences than we do. I told my close friends immediately. They know Morty. There was no lifting of eyebrows. This is Morty. I think it's great. You're doing the right thing. I was told by everybody.
When you and Morty finally saw each other, I mean, you went to the doctor's office and had that talk, and he obviously was somewhere else. And there was obviously some time shortly after that, because he still lived in your home, that you all were in the house together. Do you remember what happened then?
He was upset. Well, of course, he was living at college at the time.
Did he know
but
the
did
doctor
come
was going
home.
to tell you?
He found out. He didn't know he was going to, but he did find out.
He didn't know.
After a while. I knew it for a few months before he even knew that we knew. And again, we felt this was up to him to tell us. But when he found out, he was very upset. And there was a great deal of tension between us. We tried to talk. We found it difficult. I would say, but I love you. Why do you feel this way? And he wanted something more from us. And I didn't understand. Now I understand that you don't love him in spite of something. Just because I'm not finding the words.
No, you are.
We have to. I mean, we loved him for himself. He hadn't changed, but he wanted something more. And this, of course, came with time. And it wasn't the fact that I was able to relate and help him and feel for him. He didn't realize, I guess, the depth of my feeling at the time. Just saying, it's all right, didn't satisfy him.
You needed to express more.
That's right.
Don't we all?
You see, I remember things a little bit differently. I don't remember the details that Jeanne does, but my feeling was that there was a great relaxation of tensions, eventually anyway.
Eventually got a little
When
bit
he found-
better around the house.
Yes.
We're going to take a fast break and be joined by a woman who had some similar experiences, I think, as you two. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Dr. Manford and Mrs. Manford and I have been joined by Sarah Montgomery. And Sarah is 75 years old, although we've been telling her all morning she doesn't look it. And in the late 60s, she discovered that her son, Charles, was a homosexual. I have a picture here. It's kind of a little blurry, but I think you can make it out pretty well. It was in 1972, at the age of 46, that Charles and his male lover killed themselves in the garage of their home. A tragic and awful story, as I'm sure you can imagine it was for Sarah and those close to you. I know that it's not easy to talk about this, Sarah, but looking back, and it's been a couple of years, you've been able to think about it. Do you know why Charles killed himself?
Yes, I feel that it was life itself that killed those two men, because they had lived all their lives in the closet. And when they finally came out, they bought a house together. When they bought that house together, John, who had always been in the closet, it was known then that they were homosexual. Charles had come out quite a few years before. And John was demoted from a job that he had held for 15 years back to what he had been doing 15 years before. My son's job was threatened every day. And at 46 and 48, they just couldn't face any more of what they had been taking all their lives.
Your son was married.
My son married and had 4 children.
How did he tell you?
I learned it on the telephone. He came out and told his wife, and a month later he phoned me. And he said, "Can't you imagine what it is, Mom?" I had known he had been fragmented and unhappy, but I never knew why. How could I guess? He was married and 4 children.
You never thought?
Never a thought. And he told me, and I had only one thought, 2 thoughts really. One, that he had lived all those years without me beside him to help him, because I was never uptight about homosexuality. Second, that I would never be a closet mother. So I told all my family at once. I told all my friends.
And what did they say?
Some of them were quiet. Some were antagonistic. I faced it all. But my child really had taken all the battering he could take. Now, it so happened that both John and Charlie, I lived with the 2 men twice in California. They told me frankly and freely everything. They told me what it meant to go to a job every day of their lives, fearing exposure. They told me the tragedies that are imposed on them, not from anything they are, but what life does to them. And they told me what it is to live in a closet and betray your innermost being day after day. They spared me nothing. And they spared me nothing because I really wanted to know. How can you love a child if you do not want to know his life, his lifestyle, and what has meaning for him? So I set right out to learn a lot about the gay world. I went to the gay meetings with them. The men had a great deal of courage. They took me everywhere. They discussed everything freely with me. Nothing was held back. And I felt no strangeness at all.
I have a picture of your son here. Oh, it looks like perhaps he's with his children.
With his children.
With the four of them. If I
That
can
was
hold that
shortly
up.
after he came out. And all the children were told within 6 months because I wanted them told.
Because you did. Had he contemplated not telling?
I wanted his wife to do it, and she didn't want to at first, but she went to a doctor who backed me up and said, this is their father, they should know the truth.
Why did you feel so strongly about the
Because
grandchildren knowing?
I feel that if children learn this before they learn all the myths, the lies, and the uptight bigotry of the world, they will take it as normally and naturally as I took it. And they did. I was right. They did. They loved him. They loved John. They visited with the two men. They spent weekends with them. And they never for 5 minutes ever felt that their father was any different.
Better take a break. Be right back. Don't go away.
You know,
Psychiatrists, Mrs. Manford, as you know, are apparently split on whether homosexuality is a sickness or not, and there are some psychiatrists who simply say it is a sexual preference, and there are others who do feel strongly about this, that it is a mental illness and it needs to be treated. Do you think that your son is totally healthy in terms of mentally healthy, or do you think that he is not?
there's absolutely no thought in my mind but that he is absolutely healthy. And these psychiatrists who feel that way enrage me because they have put the stigma on my son and people who are gay and have prevented them from finding their place in society. And the city council, the men who listen to them and play games and refuse to give these people the right to jobs and homes where they want housing, and make society look down upon them. These are the things that make me angry. These people are different in only one way, and the way is their own, is their sexual preference, and sex is a private affair between two people and nobody else's business.
I see, we have a picture here, and I see that you're in this parade. I think it's it's the Christopher Street
Yes, that
parade,
was
and you're
2 years
marching
ago.
there with your son a couple of years ago. And I think a lot of people at home might be saying, gee, it's one thing for her as a mother to feel strongly about this matter, about her son, but why support him to the point of marching with him? What's the importance of that?
Because I love my son and I want him to know how I feel. I want him to know that I would do anything. You know, I'm not a martyr. My husband and I like to live a good life and we enjoy going out together, but our children's lives are important, and I will do anything within my power to see that their future is good, to make them know that I feel this way about them.
Doctor, as you also know, the psychiatrists are very eager to blame the parents for homosexuality. How do you feel? I know you said in the beginning that when you first heard from the psychiatrist that Morty was gay, you blamed yourself. You don't anymore. But how do you feel about it now for other people?
Well, I don't want to get into psychiatry, but I feel that, like all the other social sciences, it is still in its infancy. I feel that they have theories, that hypotheses that have not proven themselves from the point of doing anybody any good, in the sense of being able to cure anybody. Now, it is...
Would you have advice for anybody out there? Would you have advice for other parents who might suspect or know? Would you say, if you think you know, confront, or would you wait? I mean, how would you
I have the
approach this?
feeling that the more we communicate, the more we talk and understand and know each other, the better it will be. In the long run, if we understand, we have a better chance of progressing.
Sarah, would you say that parents who have not talked this over with their children and yet feel that he or she is homosexual should confront the child, should talk about it?
I feel two things. First, I feel the parents have a lot of work to do on themselves. They should take things as though it was completely normal. Now, I think you also have to follow your child's lead. I have two heterosexual children. I don't intrude. I leave them to do their lives. They're all very different. My other son was homosexual. I waited until I had no notion, of course, but I don't even know whether I should intrude first. I think that if you suspect it, you find ways for your child to feel at ease enough with you so that he or she will tell you. And that every parent who is told this should feel that it's a flattery and not a sorrow, that their child trusts them enough to be willing to be honest with them. Now, I feel even more strongly that parents, once they are told it, should make it their business to know their child's world, to know their child's needs and what he wants, follow his lead, but always be beside him. The first thing a parent has to know is their child faces a very hostile world, and that they need them more than ever,
Don't go
not
away.
less.
Don't go away. We'll be right back. Sarah Montgomery, Dr. and Mrs. Manford, thank you for being with us. There is an organization for the parents of gay people, and if you don't want to be a closet parent, as Sarah says, call us and we'll put you in contact with these nice people. Take care of yourself. We'll see you tomorrow.